Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is where I regularly go live to talk about current events and give my psychic predictions about what I feel is going to be happening in the near future and far future sometimes. So these are some of my predictions for 2023. And today I want to focus on China. And I'm going to tell you a few things that I've already said about China and a few new things. And if you're joining me live, you can ask me some questions. And if you're joining me after this has gone live, please do put some comments, because I will pick up on your questions, try to answer some of them if I can in the comments. And also they influence me for future shows. So welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, hi, and thank you to all you that are joining me here. I will say hello to some of you later, but I'm going to just tell you first some of my thoughts, and then we can discuss these, and you can pick my brains about the topic at hand, which is the psychic predictions for 2023 concerning China. Now, I know that a lot of you follow the channel, and a lot of you have been texting me, emailing me, and putting comments about the things that are happening in China, in particular view of the fact that I've spoken a lot about China in my time on the web here, making predictions. And you will remember actually that last month, I think it was, I said, beginning of last month, end of October, beginning of November, I said, I said that I felt December, there was something very disturbing about December, this coming up. And I said I saw a dark cloud, and I said I felt that some very, very significant events were going to be happening just before Christmas at the least expected time in many respects. You know, I mean, that's not when it seemed like everything was beginning to calm down, heading towards Christmas, but I felt something was quite dangerous happening in the background. Now, I've been kind of in a way very connected with the vibrations of China. I'm very interested in, well, you know, I like India and the rest of it, but I use the I Ching a lot, and I have a great respect for the ancient teachings of the ancient Chinese sages. And I think sometimes when you do this, you kind of get a bit of an energy from them, and a vibe from the ancient ancestors, as it were, who want to see the best for China. Now, right back, I'm going to give you a few summary of a few of the things I've said about China, and talk about these a little bit in the light of what's happening at the moment, and then we can talk a little bit further, and you can ask me questions, like I said. Now, I started talking in 2015. They're still up there on YouTube. I made a video in which I had quite a powerful vision of a revolution in China that I didn't feel at that time would have probably be happening right away, but I saw the beginnings of it starting to rumble. And this was the time when China was everybody's darling, when it was the golden age for trade with China, when everybody was piling into China. And I had a very strong feeling that, first of all, there would be a revolution in Hong Kong, which of course has kind of happened. And I think will happen again. I think we're going to see a second uprising in Hong Kong soon. And then followed by a bigger revolution in China that would be top Tiananmen Square. That would actually see the downfall of the Chinese Communist Party. And I said it would start near Mongolia, which is not quite right, but it's up in that kind of area that we had the recent uprising. And that's kind of made me, when the building went up in flames. And oddly, and I don't think this is a prediction I can say is a hit, but oddly, I was in my last lot of predictions I made, I said about a tenement building being destroyed, and I thought it was in America. But actually, could that have been what I was seeing? Because I thought that was an odd sort of thing to put in my predictions. I kind of felt I had to put this tenement building thing in, and could that have been what I saw? But I can't claim that the case because I said America. But maybe they were trying to show me that as the trigger point that's coming up now. So this is why I feel quite animated about what I'm saying to you today, because this could be the trigger point for what I've been talking about for a long time, particularly those feelings I had for December and all that as well. And I have been talking about that I feel this is the biggest thing coming up. And you remember also recently, there was I said that Xi Jinping, I said, would not see a third term. And then a number of people came on, of course, rightly, I suppose, and poo-pooed me, saying, like, he got his third term, But I never felt right about that. Now, could it be that I was seeing they're calling now for him to go? Could I have been seeing that? I don't claim to see everything clearly. You guys sometimes think, Craig, tell me this, tell me that. I don't know it all. I get feelings, I get insights, and sometimes I think they kind of, as I say, I think they're sometimes a little better than the pundits, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about these things. But I do feel that I didn't feel right with his third term, and maybe there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we could possibly anticipate, because this is a secret society, isn't it? This is a real, I suppose, Illuminati type of thing. They don't tell the world what's going on behind the scenes in China. So there's big moves going on there. Maybe he's going to be pulled out of power because of what's going on. That would fulfill another one of my predictions. I also said that I felt when this happened, a harsher leader would follow. And that worries me, because I think if this does happen, I think we're going to see some pretty dangerous times ahead, actually. Now, if you look back on my earlier predictions about China, I also said that China and Russia would form an economic and military alliance. Now, I was surprised when Ukraine war happened that there wasn't an immediate alliance between China and Russia. They were talking about shaking hands and a special relationship and all the rest of it they were talking about, and China backed off. But I don't think that's what we saw. But I think behind the scenes there's still very, very strong bonds between China and Russia, ex-enemies so long ago. When I was saying these things in 2015, China and Russia were not friends by any means. Russia is more friends with India than China. But it does appear that we are getting some more rumbles, because there today, I believe in the news, and these were only sort of recent reports, but there were the South Korean Air Force was scrambled, I believe, because Russian and Chinese jets simultaneously flew over South Korea. So could it be that we're also going to see an upset there? And again, look back at my predictions. I said coming up, there would be this problem where also North Korea gets thrown into the mix with what goes on in China. Now, so we've had this, and the thing is, you see, and I expressed this before, but I'll express it again, because this is kind of a bit of a summary in some respects for 2023. But do look back at my earlier predictions for these things. When you get social unrest in your own country and there's a potential of revolution, you've got to find you've got to distract people. You've got to find a scapegoat. You've got to find somewhere else for them to put their attention. You've got to find a new enemy. Don't attack me. That's who you've got to blame. So, of course, this is already beginning to happen, because the Chinese are saying, "Oh, America's behind all this. This is foreign powers doing this. America's doing this." Easy. Same thing happening in Iran. They'll always blame they'll always blame someone else. And America's an easy target, isn't it? And often, obviously, does do a lot of bad things with their CIA and all the rest of it. But this distraction is dangerous, because the main distraction, when you really get your back against the wall, the biggest distraction is you do the same as Putin did. You go to war. Because if you go to war, it takes the attention off you, and everybody's got something to focus on. And you hope that war will be won quickly. Backfired on Putin. He'd have been wrapping himself in Russian flags by now if he'd won the Ukraine war quickly. It backfired. But we've also going to have other distractions. And already, you know, distractions are happening, which I thought was quite interesting. The distractions around in their social media. Their social media has been absolutely flooded with spam of women looking for dating sites, you know, all flooded in at once. I've got a little note coming up with trouble broadcasting to Facebook. So sorry, guys, if you're getting a problem there on Facebook. But Bush basically pushing down all of the problems that people are posting about and their worries, and so it's flooded. You can't get to the stuff you want. This is the danger again of algorithms, isn't it? And this is why I feel, much as whatever you might feel about Elon Musk, because he's an odd character, but why we should have platforms like Twitter and here on YouTube as open as we possibly can without harming people. You know, I mean, obviously, but you know, we need those things, because if we haven't got those things, whoever controls the algorithm controls the social direction. And this is what's been happening in China. Sorry, I've got a message coming up saying about problems with Facebook feed. So sorry about that, but you can all hear me on YouTube still. So that's part of the things I've said again about these distractions. And of course, the biggest distraction is going to be Taiwan. This is the time when really, if you are a corrupt political leader, this is a good time to find a new enemy. And it's been rattling for a while. They're saying this is America behind it. They're starting to feel the rumbles, and this goes to my other prediction that I've been saying, that I was saying would happen and start in 2022. It's starting in 2022, isn't it already? The dangers to Taiwan. And I've already said a lot about this on other videos. I won't go over and over and over again, but it is all happening, guys, isn't it? It's all happening. And that's the start of what I want to say. These are the things I've been talking about. So what about events ahead? What's going to happen now? Well, my feeling is that this uprising that's happening in China now, I think it will be crushed at first. I think we're going to see it pushed down. But it doesn't matter, because I think there's going to be further waves. I think this is I'm just going to remove the stream here. Bear with me. Sorry, I've got to remove the Facebook stream. Oh, what a nuisance that is. Anyway, shows it's best to follow me on YouTube. So sorry, distraction there. So I see it being crushed, but I don't see that at the end of it. I see it actually bubbling up even more. Hong Kong, I think, is going to follow suit very, very soon as well. And I think we're also going to see the Uyghur people coming to the fore again. It's going to start break. This is a fire that started that you can put out up to a point, but it's breaking out in multiple places. So this is a fire that's going to be very hard to control. And it's going to get worse, because at the moment, everybody's protesting about the COVID restrictions. The COVID restrictions are small, I feel, in comparison to what I feel is coming up, because I have spoken about in my other videos about food shortages. I think there's going to be a big worldwide food shortage. China's going to be one of those places that's going to find the hardship of food shortages quickly. And it can't buy enough quick enough. It'll have to buy from abroad. And I feel that there will be food shortages. And it doesn't take a lot to trigger revolutions. Most revolutions, actually, just thinking historically now, not psychically, but they've often been triggered, haven't they, when there's been shortages of food. The Arab Spring happened after food shortages there. The Russian Revolution happened through food shortages. And of course, let them eat cake. The French Revolution, all caused often by food shortages, you know. And I think this is the petrol that's going to be poured on the fire. Now, in my earlier predictions too, when I first saw this, and it seems odd the way I'm talking now, but when I first saw this, I said that I didn't feel the revolution would be as bad as the Cultural Revolution, where there was mass bloodshed. Obviously, with this type of thing, there is always going to be casualties. But I do feel that this time, somehow or other, they're going to do it without vast amounts of bloodshed. I see the Chinese Communist Party falling. And I do feel that it will fall. I think if I'm right, I think it's going to fall very soon, actually, because I've been talking about this for a long time, but the signs that I've been describing seem so close to what I've said that I feel I want to say it's going to be very soon. This is going to dictate everything that happens around the world. It's going to, of course, the fingers of blame are going to be pointed at the USA, but also I feel that what's going to happen is that many people are going to start saying, oh, you're all corrupt. You've all been dealing with China. You know, you're all got your China's. You all got your pocket finger in the pot, wanting to take from China. You've all been bribed. And not just the Hunter Biden type of corruptions and things that are already self-evident, or not proven yet, but they're pretty clear that there's something dodgy been going on in the background. But I'm seeing worldwide an uncovering of Chinese corrupt money messing up the world, in the UK as well. I think there's going to be a big explosion in the UK of people being outed who have been planning to have money after they've left their political career. They don't get it now, they get it a little bit down the line, you know. And the same thing in Africa, of course, we know that type of thing's been going, but also very much in Europe too. Sweden, I felt a problematic area for this too. In Europe generally, in Germany and Italy, and even France as well, there's money being put into people's pockets to steer political events and get favorable deals for China, economically in this case here. So we're going to see a lot of political figures falling, not just in China. I'm seeing this happening worldwide, and there's going to cause more instability, unfortunately, because these things will cause more instability in our own governments. And the Middle East, I think, will be another distraction. You know, like I feel that war is often a distraction away from other events. And I'm seeing war in the Middle East. I've spoken about that as well. So we've got a pretty dodgy period ahead. Sorry, they really are right. I'm starting to sound like the prophet of doom again. But I mean, we'll get through this. And actually, this revolution will come in waves in China, but eventually it's going to end up in something really good, because I feel it's going to be one of the things that's going to help us make a decent world. This is the boil that needs to be burst, of one of them anyway. And Chinese people have been scared up to now. It's been scared to say anything, because you get carted off into, into room 101, like in 1984. They've been too scared. But look at the courage that other people are having too around the world. I think we're going to see many uprisings in the coming year. Look at those Iranian footballers refusing to sing their national anthem in support of what is happening in Iran. Could we not see in 2023 worldwide revolutions where people are starting to rise up again? We're even getting it here in the UK. We're starting to get people saying, no, I'm fed up with having such low wages for such a long time. This is another rumble happening. This is the same thing happening in Europe too. But the problem is, it does bring often resentment, because you'll often get scapegoats. And I think one of the scapegoats we'll find in Europe will be immigrants. And there will be a turn against immigrants as people start to as wild mass forces start to rise up, the mind of the mass takes on its own. The thoughts of the crowd become almost a collective thought. And I think we're going to see some very dodgy times ahead worldwide. Similar things happening around the world with great instability, but all for the best. In the end, these things have to be done if we're going to get to this better age that I've spoken about, which is an inner thing more than an outer thing, frankly. But if we're going to get to it, certain things have we are moving from the age of the dark into the age of the light, and we're getting the last throes of the bad eras that caused all the terrible troubles in previous modern history, particularly in the previous wars. We're not going to get a third world war. Let me say that. People worry about that. Not on that scale, but we're going to see I feel we're going to see a year ahead of change, major sweeping change. One of the things I also want to say, so I see this revolution coming in waves. People will have the courage. And you know, one of the things that triggered all this, it's not really one of my predictions that triggered this. It was my wife, Jane, really, because going back quite some time ago, we had the grandchildren come separately, grandchildren of a man called Sanyat Sen, who was a great Chinese political reformer and considered to be the father of China, you know. And I feel his spirit really spoke through Jane and helped to find funds that have all been spent on helping to build statues of him and promote his tremendously interesting teachings, which were some time ago, you know. But he spoke of nationalism in a kind of a positive way for China, sort of a pride in your country. And he talked greatly about democracy and the importance of having a democracy in China. And he spoke also of welfare of the people and people having welfare. Now, these were things that were being said way, way back. And Sun Yat-sen is still greatly revered in Taiwan. And I feel his teachings, and I've said this before, I feel his teachings, because his spirit wanted to come back through Jane and speak to the grandchildren and encourage them on and let us know that there's going to be a better future for China. And this really will happen. And I feel his spirit has been there from the spirit world, guiding some of the words perhaps I've said as well. But the grandfather has said that there will be a better time for China, and that those teachings that he had of nationalism, democracy, and welfare of the people will be reanimated. And I want to add that I feel that a time of peace will come for China. When the time of peace comes, we will see the liberation of Tibet, the freedom of Tibet. And I think that's coming not immediately. I think this thing's going to unwind over a couple of years, possibly. It's not going to be an overnight revolution. That's what I say. It comes in waves. Seeing the gradual freedom come and the separation of Hong Kong again from China. This is further ahead. And I also feel that eventually China will be divided into provinces again, and the provinces will become like countries. But just like Europe is an amalgamation of countries that try to work together with the free movement of people and so forth, which I don't think personally works for Europe, but I think it will work for China. There would be a kind of a central China, but the power of the provinces will be such that they will become like independent countries. And we will know that peace has really returned when a very mystical type of thing does happen in China. Now, there were some very ancient relics, I believe, that were taken to Taiwan at the time of the fall of the emperors in the past. And those, like things like an ancient cauldron and things, I'm not sure quite what it is, but there's something there. And I'm getting a strong connection with this mystical object. That I don't know the history of it, but there's something about that, I believe, in China. And it's a bit like the spear of destiny that Hitler and the Americans tried to get, which was supposed to be a spear that pierced the side of Christ. It's supposed to give the destiny of mankind. It's a similar concept in China, that there's this ancient relic, and there will be peace in China permanently once that relic is returned to Beijing. And that will happen after all this has happened. I see some big ceremonial event where relics are returned. And this, I feel, will be a very, very happy thing. Meanwhile, I feel there's going to be many strong moves soon to destroy those relics. So I want to see protection to them. I feel it's a symbolic thing, and it's very important in some ways. These are just objects, but they're also the consciousness of people. So these are things I see for the way ahead. So that relic business is something that I'm not so sure about, but I think is something that could be very, very inspiring later on. And I will also add that as China begins to fade, China won't go into an economic it'll have economic problems, but it won't collapse completely. But I do see, while all this is happening, a very strong feeling for me too that we're going to start seeing from this year now, from 2023, which is coming up here. I'm doing this in 2022, obviously, in November 2022 still. We had November, yeah, just. But I also see during this time we're going to see an economic rise of India and a breaking away of India from Russia, because of the China-Russia problem, and a increase in the influence of India on the world and taking over some of the economic things that China's done in the past. So we're going to see. We saw the rise of the dragon. We're going to see now the rise of what would be the symbol for India this time, the elephant. We're going to see the power of the elephant pushing away all these things, and actually India will one day become a very great light to the world, I feel. But that's another one, perhaps for another time. Now I'm going to take some of your questions in a minute, but while I'm on, before I forget, because I always forget to plug my books. I do sometimes, but can I suggest, if you're really interested in these things, all these doom and gloom things I'm telling you, we can be happy in these times too. I like to introduce my book, Be Happy, if you haven't read it yet. There's a lot in there about the future of the world, and also about Indians' thought, and Sharavana, who I went to see in India in this particular one, and also Messages from the Universe. This is where I go and see the NAADI oracles in India. Go and have a read of that if you would, before I take your questions. Have a read of that if you would. It tells you a lot about my thoughts and how I think and what I see for the world, and also how my personal life was so influenced. And this is about the NAADI oracles, which, just to keep plugging actually a little bit, are also now available on my website for those that really want to seek their NAADI. It's there on the website. I don't know how for long, but go and have a look, and you can go and find that. Right, let's take a few questions. So now I can see you all guys putting comments on the side here. So I do need it in terms of questions now, not just opinions. And if you've got a few questions, I'll see if I can answer some of those. So it's very important that you put your questions in now, please, guys. And I'll pick out a few comments while we're looking. Yes, Sanyat Sen is still a unifying Chinese figure. He is indeed, and I think he's going to become, like I said, very, very important for the modern future of China. Great prospects. India's a greater China culture than China. It always has been in that way. Well, yes, India is perhaps the most ancient of things. But when you look back, Eric, at the Chinese teachings from Taoism and the predate that as well, very, very similar to India. Do they not both come from the Sanatana Dharma, perhaps? When we look at the unity of cultures, we can find that in all cultures there is the truth, and the truth is the same, whichever culture it comes from. So no one is greater than another, I would say. What we got here, that looks interesting. Thanks, Jason. Will this future hardline leader in mainland China have a relatively short reign? Well, I think that's what I was feeling, actually. I didn't feel it would be a long reign. And that's, I suppose, quite an important question, because I see someone quite hardline coming in, but I don't see the Chinese Communist Party surviving long periods of time. I think we're talking the time is starting now. It's going to come in waves. Timing is so difficult with this type of thing, but I get the feeling, I keep having the feeling that 2025 is the turning point. Now, whether it happens before that, but certainly by that time, I think that we're in a period of much more optimism for the world. I think it's been a difficult time. I think that is a turning point for the world because other things are going to happen before then. But I've not seen all of it. But from what I've seen, I think he won't have a long reign, put it that way. Do you think the Chinese police will help the people to revolt? Not yet, no. I think they're too scared. I mean, they see what happens to people. And I think eventually, yes, but like I say, it's going to come in waves. That's why we're going to see suppression of these things. Then I see it bubbling up again and suppression and bubbling up again and suppression. But the more you push it down, the more I think this time it's going to come back. They scared people to death in Tiananmen Square and nobody wanted to stick their head over the parapets. But people were comfortable. If we have a period ahead where people are uncomfortable, where suddenly their jobs aren't there, where suddenly the food's not there, where there's an economic recession, because there's an economic recession worldwide, everybody keeps quiet when they're comfortable. But when it starts to affect them personally, things change. So I think it would take a number of waves. Well, I don't know bad things, I assume, actually, Marianne. Unfortunately, these poor people that have the courage are often the ones that you want to get rid of the ringleaders first, don't you? And sadly, I think I remember the grandchild of Sanyat Sen said, because of her connections during with Sanyat Sen during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and she was still in China, was made to do the worst and worst of jobs: toilet cleaning, digging trenches, sewers, humiliate them because of who they are. And the Chinese, not the Chinese people generally, but the Chinese authorities can have that awful way, I'm afraid. So sadly, these are very brave people and it will be hard for them. But if you get enough of them, if enough people have the courage, then those people will do a Nelson Mandela on us. They'll become the people that will lead a better life for the rest of people. What we got there? Ian Craig says, China has given the world so much regarding inventions. Do you see them inventing something that will benefit the world? I haven't seen immediately, Ian, but I do agree with you. I mean, China does things in a different way. Like I said about the I Ching. I mean, that was binary mathematics invented such a long time ago. The problem they had in the past, of course, was the emperors ruled it all, and they didn't have the system that would allow these things to propagate. In the same way Britain invents everything and everybody else makes it. Well, I think I'm sure there will be things like that. Nothing came to mind, actually. Just grab a few randomly. I'm not getting a chance to read them first because they're streaming up quite quick now. Will Xi Jinping go in 2023? We needed Tao to come back to save China. He is a devil from hell. Well, yeah, I don't like the man, obviously, from what I've said. I think he's a corrupt man. I think there's so much actually going on behind the scenes at the moment. He's not just one man. It's easy to blame one person, actually. There's a whole set of them, coughing with Craig again, a whole set of them there that are juggling for power at the moment. That's why I see a bit of a coup coming. Just as I've said that the same thing's going to happen in Russia. We're going to see a coup there, aren't we? We're going to see the downfall of Putin eventually. Yeah, do you know that China's former president Jiang Zemin has died several hours ago? What influence do you think it will do to the Chinese politics? Yes, I believe he did. I think he died of leukemia or something like that. When I saw that, I thought, God, what an unusual time to die. Did they sort of finish him off? Because, these we don't want him, his name around. Is it like the symbol of the end? I don't know. I think it's the former presidents have been kicked out, haven't they? They've been sweeping people from the parliament in China. Parliament, I suppose you could. Anyway, and they've sort of been doing these sort of things to clear people out. There's been a clean out, isn't there? And I feel in many respects, I think that will have an influence, obviously. I mean, this is me thinking now. I've not really clairvoyance. I've said the things I've got from clairvoyance. But I feel with him, it's just kind of symbolic in a way. Chinese people can be quite superstitious, and symbolism is a very, very powerful thing in China. It is to all of us in different ways, but very, very endemic in China for a long time. And I think symbolic things are happening at certain times. The Chinese were very much in tune with these sort of things and auguries and things in the past. I'd like to hope that they become that way again, not as superstition, but as an understanding that sometimes there's a process that works behind events called the Tao, called the power of the Tao, which leads us all ultimately to a state of equilibrium and peace. Okay, I think I'm going to finish there, guys. So if you've got any more questions, do keep putting them in the comments below, because I'm sure this topic is not going to go away. And I'm sure that would be interesting to see some of your thoughts as things develop. I think we're going to see some very interesting stuff over the coming months as this happens. And I think the news channels are going to be very busy over Christmas. Anyway, I'm going to have to say goodbye in a moment. So just going to say thanks to you all once again. And don't forget, go and have a look at my books. Messages from the Universe. And if you're bored, go and have, or no, if you want to be inspired, but rather go and have a look at Messages from the Universe, not Messages from the Universe, Mystic Journey to India, rather, which is another one of my books, which was a film. It's on Amazon Prime. So go and have a look on Amazon Prime. It's available in most countries in the world. Go and have a look on Amazon Prime for my Mystic Journey to India if you've not watched it already. I felt very inspired when I did that, and there's a lot of optimistic thoughts in there for the world ahead. You know, it's not going to be all bad times, guys. It's not all going to be bad times. These are, and also one last thought too as well about how important it is that we retain the freedom of speech. Look what's happening in China where they can't speak out. I think I'll have to do a video soon on Twitter and things like that, because freedom of speech is so important. This is one of the things that we need so much in the future, isn't it? That we treasure what we got left of our democracy. We all think it's being corrupted in every direction, and it is, but we've got to get that pure again, and that requires first and foremost freedom of speech. We need to be able to hear other voices even if we don't agree with them. We have to have the attitude that I may not agree with what you say, but I do agree with the idea that you have the right to say it. And that freedom of speech should not be dictated by political parties. It should not be dictated by algorithms, and it should not be suppressed in any way whatsoever, should it? We need these avenues. Thank goodness for YouTube, because I think YouTube gives us platforms sometimes where our voices can be heard. Anyway, I've blabbered on too long. Thank you for joining me, folks. Do keep following this channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you're here for the first time. Hit that little bell down in the corner and give us a like if you've enjoyed this, because it helps it on the algorithm, which we all have to be careful of. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now.
They're the real deal, and they're really sweet. Like, you can tell they come from a place of love, which is very endearing.
I know. You know, a charlatan, and especially in Los Angeles, you know, when you're meeting shady people, these guys are the real deal, no doubt. Yeah.
Everything about the reading was just spot on, down to the colour. She gave the colour blue, which was very prominent because we wore blue to the funeral, and it was his favourite colour. So I've seen a lot of mediums before. I was very impressed with them.
Very, very good connection. I couldn't believe the connection I got tonight.
We're definitely talking to our loved ones.
Mm-hmm. He said about the photograph, well, I had all them, and he said to me, "You've got that in your bag." And I did. I had everything in my bag, they said. When I went outside for a break, and I said to Carol, they know things that nobody else knows.
Now, where was I at the back there?
She was spot on. Everything was right. It all meant a lot to me. She had my father's name, everything, things about my brother. There's been problems with my brother, and I'm so glad to hear of them both. My father, he was doing this. I'm just glad he's friends with me, because things happened. It's all just a bit emotional.